Hello everyone, so I'm just going to put together a little video to help you go through some annotation notes, and what we really want you to focus on in this task this week is thinking about the detail that you add to your analysis notes, because in that detail will come a really good answer later on. You cannot write a good analytical PEA chain unless you have really thought it through when you are planning. And I'm going to go through with you a technique called which, what, how, why, which I use with all of my students, and it might help you perhaps just kind of focus in on analysis if you're not sure about it. So the first thing I asked you to do today was to read an extract, and hopefully you've read that for me, and you should have selected a quotation that you've written in the middle of a piece of paper. So I've written mine in here. What I'm going to ask you to do is, around that piece of paper, could you draw this? Okay, so this is an analysis diagram. So you need a rectangle at the top, put your quote in a bubble, and then draw a much bigger bubble around it, and then just label it which, what, how, why. So we're going to go around clockwise around the diagram. Okay, first thing we're going to do is, now I've picked my evidence, I'm just going to think to myself, what is the point I want to make about that evidence? And I was asked a question about the world that the character lives in. So for me, I think that the writer presents that world as something quite restrictive. So I'm going to put the writer presents the society as restrictive. So that's my point at the top. Everything that I make is, and everything that I say is all going to come back to this idea of it being restrictive. And I've got my quotation here. And the next thing that I need to do is I need to think about which part of this quotation do I want to talk about? Which part best shows my idea? Because to get those really high grades at GCSE, I can't just talk about the whole quotation. I've got to analyse. I've got to zoom in on parts of it and talk about the effect that they have. Oh, excuse my dinosaur pen. I haven't got a highlighter, so I'm just going to colour in. I'm going to go for window, but I'm going to talk about more than one part of mine. I'm also going to talk about partly. Okay. And then I'm going to think to myself, can I use any key terms here? Which word classes or which techniques are being used? Well, window, that's a noun, isn't it? So I'm mainly going to talk about nouns there. Partly, an adverb. Okay. Right, what? Down here is when I'm going to talk about what is the effect of that evidence. If you need some blue clue for that, effect basically just means, what does it make the reader think, feel or react like? What is it doing to the reader? That's all we mean when we talk about effect. If you're challenging at this point and you're really pushing yourself, you need to make it clear that you know it's an intended effect. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you've used the words writer, reader and effect at that point in your notes. So I'm just going to make some bullet point notes here. Well, I've got to make them about both words, haven't I? Because I've zoomed in on more than one part. So window, that makes me feel that the character wants freedom. Or longs to escape that society. But partly is a little bit different. So to me, partly shows that that character's trapped there. She's trapped in that society. So I think there's a bit of a juxtaposition going on here of this hope and also this feeling of being trapped. But it's not enough to just say that. If I say that at GCSE, I'm showing an understanding of the text. I'm maybe going to get like a grade 3, but I need to show that I understand that words can do these things to me on purpose if I want to get those grades 4 and above, and particularly the higher grades. So I'm now going to go round and I'm going to move on to my how. So I've gone which part of the evidence it matters, what was its effect, and now I'm going to how. And what I really need to pull apart are these individual words. What do these words mean? What are they associated with? How did they get me here? So if I want to do that, I could talk about symbolism in words. I could talk about connotation. I've put a star here because that's probably the one that I think students talk about most. So remember, connotations are just things we associate with a word. So the colour red, for example, is associated with love, anger, danger. Tone, so what it sounds like, what the emotion in it's like. Any contrast going on, that one's obviously quite appropriate for me with my quotation. Denotations, maybe the actual meaning of the words. Pace, does it slow down the text? Does it speed up the text? And if so, why? What is that doing? How does that have any kind of relevance to what you said? Is it because it's a particular type of action? Is there maybe a lot of effort in that verb? Is there not a lot of effort? Is there a desperation to it? Is there a longing in that verb that they've used? Is it a particular type of object? Is it particularly boring? Does it sound quite exotic? Does it sound mysterious? And if I'm challenging myself, I'm going to analyse multiple features or interpretations. So I might have more than one reason why a word shows me an idea. I might talk about its connotations, but I might say actually what it does to the pace also matters. Or I might do what I've done here, and I might do the what and the how with more than one word. Okay, so let's have a little look. So I said windows were important because they make me think that they need freedom and they want to escape, but they're also kind of trapped. So I would say that window has that effect because it has connotations of... I think it has connotations of freedom. Has connotations of opportunity. We talk about having a window of opportunity, don't we? But partly, I think it contrasts with it. So that's what I'm going to talk about with the how. There's a strong contrast because partly, to me, means that someone else or something external stops something. It also means that they can't go through the window. So if I was talking about window being metaphorical and sort of having this connotation of opportunity and it being a window of opportunity, I could say that because that window is only partly open, that within that figurative meaning, they can't really go through that window, so they can't take that opportunity, they can't take it to leave. And then I need to come round to why. So I've done which, what, how, and now I'm looking at why. There's kind of two strands to that. On a basic level, you need to think about, why does that show the idea that you put in your point? If you're really pushing yourself for those higher grade answers, you need to do two things. You need to talk about why that shows you the idea in your point, and also, why is the writer intending to have that effect? Why do they bother doing that? What was the point of it in the first place? So first of all, that shows restriction to me because it appears that the character doesn't have choices in that society. Also feels like she can't escape society. Remember, these don't need to be in full sentences because I'm just making notes. Why? Well, this extract, as you were told, comes from the beginning of a book. So I'm thinking maybe about why the writer might establish that kind of restriction at the beginning. One reason might be that the writer creates sympathy. Maybe at the beginning they really want me to feel this sympathy for this character. Maybe that's going to shape how I see them for the rest of the text. And maybe it could foreshadow that character will try and take that freedom back. Maybe that restriction's important because I understand they can't escape, but now I'm starting to question whether they're going to try. And then all I would do once I've got this together is I would write this up as a PEA. So this is my very first sentence of my PEA up here. That's why I've labelled it with a P. That's my idea. Then I'd use a sentence starter and introduce this quotation. And then I talk about the important features. So I might say crucial parts of this quotation are the noun window and its contrast with the adverb partly. And then down here, I would turn all of this into sentences talking about the effect of each word. And then I would talk about how it did that. If I was trying to push myself to a higher grade, I might do that a little bit at a time. So I might say that window is important, this is what it suggests, and this is how it has that effect. But also, partly is important, this is what it suggests, and then this is how it does it. And then once I've done all of that, I'm going to talk about the writer's intentions at the end, and I'm going to show off that I really understand this is a text with a desired meaning put together, and that I can unpick what its much, much bigger meaning is. And that's the reason why this is all in a big circle around your quotation. Because this is the quotation, but this is its much, much bigger meaning. And that's what you're looking at with analysis. You want to think about what is the bigger meaning here? What is the writer really trying to say? Right, have a little go with your quotation. You could do it all, or you could do each step and just play back the video at certain points that you need it.